Shalom and welcome back, guys. This is going to be a video about how they lied big time about my last video. Okay, so remember, my last video was about the group that I'm a part of and how half of them turned away from the Sabbath, the Saturday Sabbath, in favor of a shifting Sabbath that's based on the equinox. They did a 4-hour rebuttal against me that didn't make any sense because they continued to say not only the stuff that I pointed out, but made false claims about me that I said that the moon is used every year on a full moon to start the year. I never said that. You watched my whole video. In our personal chats, I've never said that either. I've said the opposite of that. And they completely try to put that on me in their video that I was saying every year has to be a full moon. Not only that, but they used the Equiluxes again in favor of Enoch 72, in Enoch of 72:20 and verse 32. It's not, and it's just very clear why 72:20 and 32 are not the Equilux at all. There's a reason why. I went ahead and made these. You can read them real quickly. But this is what the scripture says very clearly. This is what it says. It's 30, 30, 31 each season. And I give you all the verses and I break it down for you on what the Tekufa is and what verse it's referring to. And the Tekufa itself is never the beginning of a season or of the first day of the first month of the new quarter. They keep using 4Q32D, which says that the year begins on a Tekufa. So Abib 1 is a Tekufa. And that's not what Enoch 72:32 says. And I'm going to go back to that because Enoch 72:32 says that it's the last day of the year, equal day and equal night. They say it's the last Sabbath of the year and that it's the Equilux as well. And we're going to see why that's so wrong. But I need you to hear it for yourself. So let's listen to the video real quick and then we'll talk about it. And so this is what they have to say.
Yes, there is 2 equinoxes that happen and 2 equiluxes that happen every single year. There's 2 in the spring, 2 in the fall. Same thing, fall, we're going to have a fall equilux, then a fall equinox. So this clearly shows there's going to be 2 of them that happen each year. So 1 in the spring, 1 in the fall. Equilux. So what he's bringing up in Enoch, it's not affecting our calendar. Yes, there's an equal day and equal night on both ends of the spectrum. What he's messing up is he's trying to combine both of them into one. And say, oh, well, the straight line shadow equinox, that's going to be the marker no matter what. That's just not true. There's 2 markers for 2 different things. What Babylon has done is they've combined them both. Now, this is just debunking his claims that he's making himself. And he's saying, oh, well, Enoch says this. Well, is it really saying that? Because I disagree with what he's saying Enoch is saying there. This just proves out, the moon's not going to fit into the year at all. Because he wants to claim, the full moon is going to start every single year off according to Enoch. This is not going to be the case at all. Yeah, it's right here. Enoch 72:32, talking about the day and the night becoming equal, the equilux. Again, this is going to be the divider day, which Enoch 74:4-6 is showing this portal in heaven. It's going to be this divider day, the same divider day.
So you heard it for yourself. He said this is the Equilux. And he brought up the fall Equilux like, oh, this happens every year, twice a year. This is what Enoch is talking about. No, he's not. Enoch is talking about the equinox for the spring and the fall. Because 91 days later is the solstice. This is what they fail to understand. So here you have it right here. As you can see from March 21st, if we're going to go with what Enoch says, March 20th is the equinox. So from March 21st to June 20th, which is the solstice, it's 92 days of spring. If you look at the 21st of June to September 22nd, the equinox, that's 94 days of summer. And look at the next one, September 23rd to December 21st. That's 90 days of fall. And then the last one is 89 days of winter. 92, 94, 90, 89. That's very close to what Enoch says is 30, 30, 31 for an entire year, which is 91, 91, 91, 91. 91 days a season is what he's saying. And we see here 92, 94, 90, and 89. And we see that the summer is quite long because the summer probably takes 3 days out of the other 2 seasons, for the fall to be 91 and for the winter to be 91. That's a lot closer than what they're saying, because strictly off what they're saying, if we interpret it as the equilux, this is what you get right here on the bottom. And you get 96 days for spring, 98 days for summer, 86 days for fall, and 85 days for winter. And then they're going to use Enoch 80 to say, oh, well, the seasons aren't exactly, they're out of course. No, they're horrendously off course. 91 days a season is not the same as what you're saying here. They don't even know what they're saying. They're just saying, oh, it's equal day, equal night. They're not even counting what that looks like from the lux to the solstice. They're not counting. They're not counting how it fits on the calendar yearly, and they don't even see the problem with it. So just so that I properly represent them here, because they say, oh, you don't understand our position. Oh, I understand their position very well. I just disagree with it. This is their position right here. This is the changing Sabbath. It's very simple. 316 is the equilux. 320 is what they are going to call the first day of the first month, which is going to be day 4 in their 7-week cycles. I hope that's not confusing for you. 4 days later is after the equinox is going to be the Sabbath. So if the equinox is on a Monday, then 4 days later is Friday. Friday is the new Sabbath. If the equinox is on a Saturday, 4 days later is a Tuesday on the Gregorian week count. Then Tuesday is now the Sabbath. So that's why it's called a shifting Sabbath. They don't see it as shifting because they're saying that the equinox is just like a reset, and it's not. It's breaking a 7-year sabbatical cycle, or a 7-day count of sabbatical cycles. So I believe the number 7 is just to be continually counted. And right here, they're not doing that. And they claim that they're not doing that. It's called a non-day. And so I've actually watched the 4-hour video, and I got this screenshot from them about their calendar using 316 as a divider day. So they used the equilux as a divider day after the Sabbath. And they use 4Q32D to prove their point. And I'm actually going to go through that on why they're using that falsely. But this is their understanding. The Sabbath is the 28th day of the 12th month. Then the day after the Sabbath, what we would call Sunday, they call it the equilux. And then they call it a divider day. So that's where their non-day is going to be. Their non-day is not going to be the last day on the calendar, the 365th. It's going to be this divider day. That's the non-day. I didn't know that. That's what they said in their video. That's why there's this chart in front of you showing this is what they said in the video. This is straight from the video. After the divider day, now it's the 29th, the 30th, and the 31st of the 12th month. And then the equinox happens, and now it's the first day of the first month, all over again. And so in doing that, they have the divider day as the equilux, that's the non-day. And then they have the last 3 days of the month there. And so if your Sabbath was the 28th, well, now the next day is the equilux, and that day is not counted. And then you would count 1, 2, 3, then the equinox, and then go 4, 5, 6, 7, there's your Sabbath again. So It actually broke the count and used an 8-day count. So what's actually very interesting is that the equilux is 4 days before the equinox in the spring, but it's 4 days after the equinox in the fall. So the equilux happens 4 days later in the fall. They didn't say that in their video. They did not say that that's what happens. They just said there's an equinox both seasons. Duh, don't you know? That's what Enoch says. And then in my conversation with Jeremy, he said, oh, that's not, the fall one is not important. It's just mentioned in the book because it's mentioned information. It's not important. We don't use it. Well, you don't use it because it's 4 days after. It doesn't support what you're trying to do with the spring. If it was 4 days before, you would have used it. If the equilux was 4 days before the equinox in the fall, just like it was in the spring, then you would have used it. But because it's after, oh, that's not important. But you mentioned it in your video like I was wrong in interpreting 72:20 and 32 as my current statement. They are not the equiluxes. They are the equinoxes.
Here, Enoch 72:32, talking about the day and the night becoming equal, the equilux. Again, this is going to be the divider day.
And you differed. You even said it yourself. Oh, I completely disagree. So that's the problem with it, is that they don't want to use it because it's after, and it disproves what they're supporting. So then again, to me, what I saw is that the equilux, the equinox is the same equinox. The spring and the fall equinox is the same one. It's the fourth middle right here. So in the spring, the sun, let's just say, starts in the middle. It goes this way. And then it goes back to that same fourth gate. That's the equinox again. Then it goes into the third gate. And it goes this way, and then it comes back. Oh, now it's going into the fourth gate. This is why it's 4 days before. But then when it comes back around, it's 4 days after. See? That's why. And so to me, what that said is that because it's 4 days after in the fall and 4 days before in the spring, it's interesting that there's 3 days between them. Between both equilux and equinox, there's 3 days between them. And we never count the day of. We always count the day after. Just like Enoch says, the summer solstice is not the first day of the fourth month. It's the last day of the season of spring. It's not the first day of summer. The summer solstice is not the first day of summer. And it's not the first day of the fourth month. It's the last day of the third month. Right? So with that interpretation, we don't count the equinoxes and solstices as the days. We count the day after as the start of the season. So in essence, the method for the leap week would be the same. That if you go back to the spring here, from March 17th to March 23rd is the best way to have your leap week. And someone shared this with me. It was Bob and his wife. They shared with me weeks ago that they concurred. And his wife specifically said that she heard from the Holy Spirit. Why the 17th through the 23rd are numbers that God is speaking to us through on the Gregorian calendar. And the reason being is because the 17th, 317, stands for 1 week is 7 days. And 323 stands for Leviticus 23 verses 2 through 3, which talks about the Sabbath before all the feast days start to get mentioned at verse 4 with the Passover all the way down for the rest of the chapter. So the Sabbath is just as important as establishing before the feast days can get established. And here's the thing, we don't want to break the Sabbath. We don't want to break the Sabbath with 365 days, or 366. So we keep counting 364. We keep counting in sevens. That's what the Gregorian does. The Gregorian doesn't reset the year. If it started on a Monday, the next year's not going to restart on a Monday just because they have non-days. They're like, heck no. We're going to keep counting in 7 and not break that count. And so if the year changes, the year changes. That's how they decide to count. The Zadok Calendar doesn't want to break it. So it only makes sense that 1 week is 7 days. And from the 17th to the 23rd, we need to establish the Sabbath. We need to establish the leap week. The 1 week is 7 days. We need to establish where we're putting this 1 week of 7 days. That is an extra intercalation that keeps the 7-day cycles going unbroken. So we're going to say we're adding days in a year, but we're adding 7 so that we don't mess up our cycle. Well, you're still keeping the commandment of every 7 days rest. Every 7 days rest. That's what your leap week is for. It's another 7th day to rest. But the leap week does it because it's supposed to be from the 17th to the 23rd. That's where your 7 days are the best fit, because the equinox would be the middle ground. And so 4 days before that would be the equilux. So you always want to be after the equilux in the spring, and just like the fall, you always want to be before. So this is why you can intercalate from the 17th to the 23rd. You have to play in that field. So I really appreciate Bob and his wife for sharing that with me. And that made a lot of sense. And I can see it here with the evidence of the equinox and equiluxes that is possibly a witness for it being that way. Other than that the Gregorian numbers tell us something in our modern day, which is incredible. Only God can speak to us like that, and we have to be able to catch it. Yeah, so in reference to that, there's also someone in our group that has put a lot of work into finding the moon cycles. And so finally, she found something, and it is where the Jubilee starts and ends, and what Enoch 78:7 that I pointed out, where it says the full moon is the sign of the year, what that actually means. And so like I said in my last video, what does it mean? Does it mean the first year, the fourth year? Does it mean, which year is it that it's assigned for? And so technically, there's still some math to find within the 200 years that's recorded when that happens all the time. But basically what was found is that 2016 was year 1 of 28 on the solar cycle, and there was a leap week for the intercalation. So it starts on March 23rd with a full moon, and the equinox was March 20th. So it's 3 days after the equinox, and there's a full moon on it. And I have that recorded in my part 4 video, where I give you all the days of the year with the moon cycles and why that was a big deal for the Sabbath. And so that made 2015, as Leland Jones and several others have said, a Jubilee year. But why? Why does it make it a Jubilee year? Because the full moon landed after an equinox on a Wednesday at the end of a Jubilee. So as more information and more calculations are being done, I think, from what has been shared with me, is that the full moon is the sign of the year when it's a Jubilee year. When the Jubilee year had just finished. Or it happens every end of the 28-year cycles. It's one of the two. So putting color-coded information and all that with the lunar cycles to see what it is. And it's pretty incredible because the moon follows, one of the things I found is that the moon follows 19-year cycles, but it doesn't follow lunar 19-year cycles. It follows solar 19-year cycles, meaning it's 19 years of solar days and not lunar months. So a lunar year is 354. If you do 19 years of that, you would start in the spring and end in the fall. 19 years. And so doing it from solar point of view, a lunar year, 19 years of lunar, is it's a 200 and something day difference. It's 212 days difference if you went strictly lunar count versus solar count. And so 19-year lunar cycles are solar counted. They're not lunar counted. Last but not least, I wanted to go over 4Q32D. So basically what happened here is that they mentioned in their video that right here at the end of the 12th month, it says on Vakat, weekday 2, in it falls, this and that. And so you can read this entire passage and see how broken up and messed up it really is. But they were going here to this word vakat, that means empty. And they go, oh, look, after the Sabbath, there's an empty day on it. And so that's the divider day. And here's the calendar again to show you. There's the equilux, that's the divider day that does this on vakat. Now, first off, vakat is not even a Hebrew word. So this is just showing here in the English, and I highlighted it here in blue, so you can match it with the Hebrew right above. This is why it's actually important to read Hebrew. You can see the inconsistencies, you can see the additions that are in the English that just make the confusion all more confusing. Right here, you have vakat with a bet in front of it, which makes no sense. If that word was actually something, they should have wrote it in Hebrew that it was an empty, that there's a gap. They should put parentheses and put a gap. Not write it out in English with a bet in front of it. That doesn't do anything. And right here, you can see how in parentheses it says weekday 2, and only the O is, not in a parenthesis, is not in a bracket here. And so if you look on the top, in the brackets is the letter shin, and not in the brackets is a nun and a yod. And so that word is shani, which means the second, right? Or 2. It's the number 2. So that's where you can see where they're getting this is how you can see they're breaking up the English based off what the Hebrew presented. And seeing the Hebrew close the way it's written is different than the way the English is presented. So you can tell vakat doesn't belong there, and I'll tell you exactly what does. And so if you go back to 4Q32 above it, you will find the end of the 3rd month. And there's the word vakat again. Is that a divider day? Is vakat mentioned at the end of the 3rd month? Is that a divider day? No, it's not. So the logic they use to present the divider day is inconsistent with the very document they're using. And I go, okay, so months 1 through 3 have to repeat the same as 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They have to repeat. It has to be the same. The cycles are the same. So I went back and I looked and I go, what's in brackets, what's not in brackets? And I found this, that vakat is there again. It's Hebrew and then vakat and then more Hebrew. That makes no sense. But let's go with their interpretation. Vakat means, a divider day. In the 12th month, it's a divider day after the 28th, the last Sabbath of the year. Well, right here, is it as well? In fact, this is worded very differently. This is the end of the 3rd month, and it's worded very differently from the 12th. Why is that? Because, see, you're using this incorrectly. I went ahead and checked the Hebrew. So I underlined the Hebrew. This is what's in brackets. But I underlined the Hebrew so you can see what the English properly conveys. The word for day is only the vav and the mem for yom. And that might actually be wrong because that should be a final mem, not a regular mem. So it could be part of a word that's missing or something else. It could be yamim for all we know. And they left it as a regular mem and not a final mem. Also, right here in line 7 is what I'm talking about in the Hebrew compared to the English. So the purple is 3 additional vakat. That's recorded in the Hebrew. Hashlichim nosaf, right? So then the beginning of the 4th month is on weekday 4. That's the English. But the Hebrew just says ha-revi'i, yom ha-revi'i. The 4th, day 4. That's literally what it says. So you can see all this English that is added that is, 1, not part of the Hebrew, and 2, words that kind of confuse. And so you need to see the Hebrew as raw as it is, but that's not what it says. Just letting you know. And if it did say that, well, then there's a non-day, there's an empty day, there's a divider day in the 3rd month as well, if what you're saying is correct. Jeremy, Katrina, Adrian, my goodness. This is incorrect. You guys aren't reading the documents full. You're using shallow arguments, and vakat is not a Hebrew word. It's just empty part of the text. They don't know what goes there. And it proves the way that they're using it in other passages, not just the one passage you wanted to use it for at the end of the 12th month. And just so that we're very clear, I found how this is reflected in another document. It's called 4QMMT. And in 4QMMT, we have it recorded like this. Look at how month 3 ends. In the 3rd month, on the 7th is a Sabbath, 14th is a Sabbath, the 15th is the Feast of Weeks, the 21st is a Sabbath, the 28th is a Sabbath. After 1st, 2nd, an extra 3rd is added. There it is. Does that match 4Q32Ds? It sounds very familiar, doesn't it? Now let's skip to the 12th month. In the 12th month is the Sabbath. On the 14th is a Sabbath. The 21st is a Sabbath. The 28th is a Sabbath. After 1st and 2nd, an extra 3rd is added, and the year is complete, 364 days. Oh my gosh, that matches 4Q32D. Oh yes. Except right here, there is no vakat mentioned, because this one wasn't missing the information. This one had it the way that it was. And so the 1st and the 2nd and the 3rd is added. These are the days of the week. So after the Sabbath is the Sabbath is the 28th. The last Sabbath of the 12th month is the 28th day. So after that is the 1st, which is the 29th day. After that is the 2nd day, which is the 30th. And after that is the 3rd day that's added, because it's the 31st. And then the year is complete. See that? That's correct theology. That's correct teaching. That's correct documentation from the Dead Sea Scrolls with no vakat interfering. And it's word for word identical. And it makes sense. Because vakat was used in the 3rd month, and that wasn't a divider day. So that goes against what you're saying for the 12th month as well. Vakat's not even it's not even a Hebrew word. They just throw it in there in English with the Hebrew letters, and it doesn't make any sense. But here we have it completely full in 4QMMT. This is how it reads. The way you explained your interpretation of it and read it is very incorrect. And so that would be the conclusion of my video. There is more coming out about how the moon is used properly to show us things in the solar cycles, to determine the years, to determine the Sabbaths, to determine when a year begins and why it's intercalated and all that. All of that is literally mathematically proven by the moon and the way that it shows up. And when a leap week happens, how it changes the pattern of the moon and makes it line up again in a different way. So it's just very interesting. It's very articulate. The math behind it is yet to be seen fully. We've only seen it for 2 jubilees, and it's incredible. So there's more to it though. So more coming back on that later when that probably gets a better grasp of how it's, when there's more detail and it's fuller in understanding, so that I can present it here. Right now that's all that I know of. That's all that has been shared with me and that I've seen as I've written it down as well and can see it for myself. So I'm not going to share it here, just mentioning it that it's true. So the Saturday Sabbath is reliable because we couldn't find out this stuff using the moon if we shifted our days of the week every year according to a solar equinox. Like, you have to use a continual 7-day count to find this stuff tracked throughout 200 years. If the equinox falls on a Wednesday, we need to know it's a Wednesday in 1965. And the next year it's on a Thursday in 1966. And then the next year it's on a Saturday in 1967. We need to have a continual 7-day count that's not broken to see, okay, so the full moon landed here and it didn't land here and it landed on a crescent here and all that. That has to be reliable information. If we're changing the 7-day weeks, the way they're counted, the equinox was on a Tuesday, so now, the equinox was on a Saturday, so now Tuesday's a new Sabbath, so your full moon fell on a Wednesday instead of what it should have been on. It fell on a Friday, something like that. However you do that, you're going to screw up the years. You're going to screw up where the moon falls, and it makes no sense, which is why I pointed out in my last video The moon goes against the very teaching that they proclaim, because the moon can't break a cycle. The moon counts, consecutively 29:30, 29:30. There is no non-days for the moon to follow. You can say that for the sun and ignore everything, but the moon's going to show up when it shows up. From the first day, and then 14 days later is the full moon. It has to do that. There's no non-days that's going to stop it from popping up when it's supposed to. So the moon needs to show us where it's falling in a continual 7-day count of weeks. And so that's what the Gregorian follows, because that's what works. That's what the previous calendar, the Julian, followed, a 7-day calendar. That's the only thing that works. That has to be reliable. And because it is reliable, we can see stuff pop up. We can see stuff move. We can see a day move ahead. We can count the years of the sun. The years of the sun are 10,227 in a 28-year cycle. And if you go off of that strictly using 364 for 28 years, it's 10,192. But a true solar count is 10,227, which is 35 extra days in 28 years, which is 5 leap weeks, 35 days. And so that's what we're seeing when the moon pops up. The moon pops up on the 1st of the 28th in the cycle every single time, or every single time of a Jubilee year. That's what we're seeking out. So we have to trust a 7th-day continual count. It's not wrong. If we shifted the 7-day count, all this information would be so invalid and crazy and all over the place. And it's not. It's trackable. It's hard to track, but it's trackable. And the other thing is that the moon is likened to, the moon is the lesser light, and there's 2 great lights. That's what Enoch says. These are the 2 great lights, the sun and the moon. Man and woman. The sun is masculine in Hebrew. The moon is feminine in Hebrew. We are the 2 greatest creations of all time, of God's creation. Man is greater than woman, though. But Enoch also says, and this is actually really good, that the sun basically charges the moon and gives it its light. Just like Adam, he gave his rib for God to create Eve. Eve is created straight out of Adam. For those of these, Katrina, Jeremy, Adrian, all these claiming we're moon worshipers for keeping a Saturday and using the moon to prove our point, we're not worshiping the moon, okay? We're using it to prove the solar points and how to keep track of solar years. Therefore, because you guys completely throw out the moon and call it all over the place, inconsistent, unreliable witness, it is a reliable witness against your theology. That's why you call it unreliable, because it doesn't fit your theology. And in doing that, in essence, the moon is feminine. You're calling, I don't know if I should even say this. It's more of a joke, so don't take it so literally. But in you saying we're throwing out the moon because it's complicated, it's like saying let's throw out the women because they're complicated and they're all over the place and they're unreliable. Now, that might be offensive, but that's why we're not throwing out the moon. The moon complements the sun. The moon shows us what the sun does. The sun charges the moon. The moon's going to be this left behind marker to mark the solar years. Why wouldn't you agree with that? Why would you be so against the moon? Why would you be so against using both? You do. You've said it in your videos. You've said it to me. Called me a moon worshiper. Called me that I put the full moon every year when I never said that. Liars. You guys are lying. You're not presenting your information accurately. And then based off what you are presenting accurately, it doesn't fit the scripture. This is my rebuttal to you guys. And that's all I have to say for now. So until next time, shalom.